Welcome to the Billionaires Book Club, where we read and discuss books written by billionaires. Today's book, why not start at the top if we're going to start anywhere? Today's book is by Bill Gates. If you guys don't know who Bill Gates is, you're probably living under a rock. But basically, he has been the richest person in the world, and it keeps fluctuating. And then, every few years, he drops down to 5 or 6 or 10, and then he comes back up. And it's kind of weird how that works. In the last decade, he's pretty much built this foundation to donate most, if not all, of his money to charitable causes, if you've heard about him at all. And he's, despite donating a tremendous amount to that, and being one of the top donors in the entire earth, he's still fluctuated, and his Microsoft stock has allowed him to bump back up to the top after many years of falling down. But again, who cares about that? It's not about the numbers. It's about this book. So here's the thing. No one really reads this book. The people who are aware of it, they don't read it. And if you look on Amazon.com or Goodreads.com, it's coming out at a 3 out of 5 stars on average. It's not rated very high. Does that mean you shouldn't read this? No. This is one of the most successful business people of all time. He knows a thing or two about business. So even if his book sucks, I have a lot of respect for him because I'm sure there's some level of knowledge I can gain from that. And if not, you're still learning something, because this man went through a lot of business experiences, and to get to the level he has with Microsoft, you can't just ride on everyone else. You have to have a certain level of talent, certain level of business skill, all that sort of stuff. So there is some level of information you can get from this book. Who cares if people are rating it 3 out of 5 stars? So what do I think about this book? Well, I would say, first off, it's not the most eloquently written book. It's not the most interesting book. It can get dry at points. But fortunately, it's not super, super thick. And so that was good. And on top of that, it was just very interesting. So I listened to it through audiobook. And for me, it was very interesting because the first thing I noticed, probably the biggest thing that comes to mind, is his level of business knowledge and business history. So you can just tell by reading this book, or at least I could, that he has a lot of business history knowledge, which is very important. And he'll be citing examples from all these different companies, from Boeing to this and that. And you can just tell that he does his research. Warren Buffett once mentioned how Bill Gates, he just tears through books. He reads books like they're nothing. And he's constantly reading. Every year he releases a recommended reading list, and it's a lot of books in it. And then if you go on to his foundation website, you can see his recommended reading list, which is just enormous. Unfortunately, he doesn't have the time to do anything other than recommend them. Occasionally, he'll write like a 2-paragraph review of the book. But, it's still there. The titles are still there. And you can see this man is a voracious reader. He just destroys books. And it obviously helps him. He has tremendous business knowledge. And when he's making business decisions, just like Warren Buffett, he has all these reference experiences, from big companies that have failed to small companies to this or that and so forth. So it's very interesting. And let's go back to Boeing. So Boeing is a great example of this. Basically, it did something very risky. It decided to go into a pathway that was not set into stone. So at the time of this story, Boeing was pretty much a underdog. And basically, there's another competitor company that was manufacturing planes that was raking in the dough. and it was the supplier of most of the planes for World War II. And Boeing made a risky move, which was develop this new type of plane, this huge plane. And this was something that was experimental and cost a tremendous amount of money. Planes are like one of the most expensive things on earth, millions of dollars. And they built this thing and took a risk to do that. But it paid off tremendously because this was like so revolutionary. So the point of that argument is in certain industries, that's how fast things can change. Now, actually, does that mean you should always take risks and just blindly do whatever? No, it means take calculated risks, and depending on where you're at and what you're doing and the industry you're in, some industries are much more chill and much more reliable. You can trust them more. It's, for instance, Coca-Cola. Warren Buffett invests in Coca-Cola because he knows in 10 years people are still going to be drinking that soda. It's very simple, very easy to understand. On the flip side, you have stuff like Boeing or pretty much any tech company from Dell to Facebook to Kodak, whatever have you. These things can change very quickly by the nature of the industry. Processing chips, processors, IBM, Intel, all those things. And arguably, depending on the specific company, things may change slower. But you get the general gist of it. Or, depending on a certain company, you may have a extreme advantage. And even if everyone else zigs when you zag and you make a mistake, it won't be a huge problem. But again, for a lot of companies, that is how it is. And this brings us to a very important point, which I think is common. I've seen this in some of the best entrepreneurs, from Warren Buffett to Sam Walton of Walmart, and that's to stay vigilant. Never get too arrogant or complacent because you've taken the lead. And this was how Sam Walton operated, and this was how Bill Gates operated. They used almost the same wording behind it. They always viewed themselves as an underdog. And that's one of the things that Bill Gates says in this book. He says, we always viewed Microsoft as an underdog. By the way, the narrator of the audiobook, apparently he didn't know what Microsoft was because he would keep pronouncing it Microsoft, or some weird way of pronouncing it. But then again, this book was written like in 1998, so I don't blame him. The point is, he said that Microsoft always viewed itself as an underdog. And the day we stop viewing ourselves as an underdog is the day that we'll go down under. In addition to that, he said that in the next 5 years, there will be at least 3 big critical changes or decisions based off how the industry is changing that we will have to make as a company. And if we make a mistake on any of those changes, our company is done for. And then he said other stuff like, one day some upstart or some new company will rise up and take Microsoft out of business. I just hope it's in the next 50 years rather than the next 5 years. And at this point, obviously, even to Bill Gates, Microsoft has grown to something beyond anyone's imagination. And it's built quite a market share and following and brand and competitive advantage and so forth. And you might be thinking, there's no way that this thing will ever go out of business. Well, if you look at the history of some of the biggest businesses on the Dow Jones Industrial Average or the S&P 500, if you look across a 50 or 100-year span, a lot of these giants that you would think would never go out of business, they're gone today. And if you even were to reference them, people won't even know what they are. They're like, what's that? But back in the day, these things were monsters. For instance, what's a good one? Bethlehem Steel or US Steel, I think it's called. I forgot what it's called. These were monsters. and they were like the top of the pack, $1 million businesses. And where are they now? They're they're out of business. They're gone. And then especially for something like tech companies like Kodak or Xerox, they're not doing well at all. So you get the point, and you know, obviously, as of this moment, Microsoft has a huge. It's it's taken its nails and just clawed into the ground, and therefore it'd be hard to uproot something like this because it has Xbox and all the games with Xbox, and you know, Xbox is pretty much one of the big three consoles, gaming consoles, and that's pretty deeply rooted. Although you know, some of it is being handed over to Sony's PlayStation, and then there's PC gaming, but and then there's Oculus Rift coming in with virtual reality. But generally speaking, you know, it's pretty darn solid, and it has a bunch of other stuff like Windows and so forth, and then the Android and that stuff. But man, no one buys that right now. The point is, some of its stuff is slipping. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I don't like the new Windows stuff. I think still to this day, the best revolutionary, smoothest operating system was Windows XP. Like without a doubt. Like this Windows 7, Windows 8 stuff is just like ridiculous. So it's starting to slip and stuff. And then like, I mean, MSN search used to be top. Now who uses Bing? And here we have, I mean, let's not get into a tangent here. Let's get back on track. So, in terms of this book, you know, there were definitely points I liked, and obviously, he's a tech guy, and therefore you should take his advice from a tech perspective, a tech industry perspective, and you know, these things may not apply to other industries. So, based on the nature of how it works, you know, these tech companies move very quickly. And I want to bring about one final point before I finish off this video. It's going to be a huge point, but this is probably one of the biggest things that he says in this book, and it's insane. And he goes into so many examples of this, and it's probably one of the biggest takeaways from this book. He talks about how the digital age, the digital revolution, and the flow of information is just, you know, completely changing businesses. And I think he hit the nail right on its head. I mean, he wrote this book so long ago, and he's predicted so much, and he's mostly been right about all these future expectations and changes, give or take. I think he was slightly, there's certain things he was slightly off in, like that any sick child will have the ability to just virtually go to class from their home. That hasn't really been implemented. But there's so many things he hit the nail on. And one thing I do agree with is the fact that he says that almost every business will be affected by digital, the flow of information and all this new technology. And I remember there's this one story where, you know, Bill Gates first meets Warren Buffett, and Warren's a very old-fashioned type of guy, invests in old-fashioned companies. And guess what? He's talking to Warren Buffett, and he's like trying to convince him that technology is going to change everything. And then Warren's like, well, will it change the fact that people are using, are shaving their beards, or drinking Coca-Cola, or chewing Wrigley's gum? And that kind of stumped Bill Gates. And the point of it was, it's kind of the nature of how Warren Buffett, generally speaking, invests. And that's how he buys companies he's very sure of will do very well in the long run, despite any changes going about, because of their durable competitive advantage and their moat. And that's how I thought about it for a while. But then after reading this book and seeing other examples, I'm pretty sure that even these companies that Warren Buffett mentioned, they have been affected quite a lot by technology and information. I mean, I don't use one of those disposable razors. I haven't for like I ha- I used it like for the first week um, of the year, maybe 4 years ago, and since then, my family has bought me a electronic shaving thing. You don't need shaving cream, nothing, and it's worked perfectly. I barely have to charge that thing, and I'm doing a product review on it. It's by ConocoPhillips. Amazing thing. Bought it at Costco. Beautiful. Perfectly shaved, as you can tell. And then Coca-Cola. There's definitely a shift, especially in the U.S., towards health drinks, but globally, it's still doing very well, and it's doing better. Although certain things are slipping, it's still doing fairly well. But Wrigley's chewing gum, for the last few years, I mean, sure, Wrigley's is still doing decent, but there's been a lot of these new age chewing gums popping up that are on all these shelves that we're all trying these days, and a lot of us prefer. So Wrigley's has even lost a bit of its advantage. So you can get the point. And then from a technological standpoint, I see it on the internet. I see it. Coca-Cola influenced tremendously by technology. From the accounting to HR software to the fact that they're now installing in Burger King these ridiculously awesome vending machines where it's a touch screen, and then like you can choose your flavor, and then it'll come out, and you have all these different types of flavors for different sodas. And it's like you can choose Sprite, and then all these flavors of Sprite: vanilla Sprite, strawberry Sprite, on and on and on. And I tried it out. They still have some kinks to work out, but it's still really cool. Like I tried the strawberry Sprite, and I don't know what it was. It was just, I guess, the flavoring. Like they just put it in all these flavorings and hoped it worked. But the one I tried out of the hundreds they had, it tasted horrendous. Like literally like puke. It didn't taste like strawberry at all. So they have some kinks to work out on that. So I'm getting off track again. Back on point. One of the big points Bill Gates makes in this book, which I find very interesting, is that as far as these companies go, information and technology and the internet and all of that coming together and integrating, if you don't jump on that and you don't use it very well, your competitors will steamroll you because it allows for so much potential. And it's so true. For instance, now on the internet, you may not know this, but companies are picking up tremendous amounts of information about you, from what sites you visit, to where you go, to what you click on, to what price you're willing to pay for an airline ticket. And they'll take this information and use it with all this other stuff, all these other statistics that they couldn't get their hands on before. And then they'll use all these tactics to get the best, most profitable price from you. And there's so many other stuff from the internal workings of the business. So for Bill Gates, he has this great example where he literally saw that his company was spending millions on HR and paperwork, in terms of hiring the person, in terms of small things like sending them letters and directions on where their office is, and accounting and all this stuff. And he made it mostly, if not completely, paperless and all digital, using his own company's software. And it saved him millions of dollars, made the whole process a lot faster, a lot quicker, a lot easier, and saved a lot of time, saved a lot of man hours. And rather than hundreds of pages of accounting, now he just had to, use his programs on his computer. So that's just one of many examples. And long story short, I do think this book is worth the read, whether you're in a tech field or not, especially if you're in the tech field. Is it a holy grail book? No, but you're bound to take some useful advice from this. I mean, this is a king of business you're talking about here. And no, he's not without fault. He's not without flaws, but is anyone? And so, I mean, it's really important. And at the start of his book, in his introduction, he says this thing about how this book is intended for people starting a business or are CEOs or top executives of a business and looking to understand this new age we're in with information and technology and all this stuff and properly use it to the most efficiency possible. And even to this day, I see it. People are not. People are still clueless. People who have grown up with digital technology, computers, instant messaging, iPhones, some of them are still kind of lost or oblivious to this. And then there's all the other people who are in their late 40s or 30s who are not doing their best to utilize this. And then I've also seen the flip side, especially in the tech startup world, where they're just trying out too many stuff, and then um, there's other problems like the fact that most of them suck, or they're taking on too many extra stuff that's not really helpful or just unnecessary, like HR softwares and recruiting softwares and stuff like that. I mean, it's subjective. It's a case by case basis decision. Again, I'm not expert at this. I'm just listing my observations, and um, this gets into another point which was made in Peter Thiel's book, Zero to One. He's another book that I'll be reviewing. He talks about this whole idea of being a order of magnitude 10x better than all your competitors. And still to this day, I see a lot of companies failing to do a lot of things in these books. From always thinking you're an underdog, like Sam Walton, from his first store, to the time when he was $100 million company, to $1 billion company. They were always the underdog, always vigilant. And the way you expand, like Peter Thiel says, sometimes it's better to take it, find a niche, dominate that, and expand locally, rather than just do it in a different way. Or again, it's a case by case situation, because at the same time I've seen other companies do just that fairly well. But at the same time, is that really true? The one that comes to mind is Amazon, and then, oh wait, no, Amazon didn't do that at all. Even Peter Thiel says that Amazon. Sorry, I'm starting to ramble, but what I'm saying here is that oftentimes you want to take some of this advice and use it. So, for instance, Peter Thiel said you want to dominate a niche, dominate a local area before you expand it. Just like how Amazon started as a global internet seller of only books and slowly expanded to a store that sells everything. Just like how Facebook started in Harvard communities, then Ivy League communities, then eventually became global, rather than a global attack from the start. So the point is, you have to start implementing this stuff. And what I'm seeing is that there's a lot of stuff out there that can be a lot better. And I'm seeing these software companies and HR software companies, and they're pretty much identical or slightly better than their competition. And that's not enough. That's very rarely enough. And Peter Thiel makes a great point with that. That's all I gotta say. As always, like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. If you want anything more, obviously I can go into a little bit more detail about this book, maybe more than a little bit, but I've hit most of the big points. And I'll leave a link in the description for this book if you want to check it out and read it. It'll be a link to the Amazon.com page with the book. And I will see you in my next video. As always, leave it a like and hit the subscribe button. It'll be somewhere here. Thanks for watching. Peace.